In the Woods Somewhere by Joshua Waggoner. Bigfoot, Thad, have you lost your goddamn mind? I asked an old acquaintance of mine over the phone late one evening. What the hell makes you think I want to go wandering around in the woods with a bunch of yokels looking for a hairy boogeyman?
I know it sounds stupid. Look, you don't have to do hardly nothing. You just gotta make sure they don't get lost, fall off a cliff, or do any other dumb shit that those types do out there. Just make them feel all warm and safe. It's easy money. Don't you like the woods anyway?
Thad argued. Yeah, just not with other people. You know how I am.
A grumpy old asshole? Yeah. People in China know that. But you know your way around out there. They specifically ask for someone who knows the area.
But Thad, I don't know the area. I've never been 20 miles from where these, whatever kind of people they are, want to go.
Well, yeah, I know that, but you don't gotta track an escaped convict. Just babysit and throw a rock off to the side every now and then to keep them spooked and happy. What part of easy money is so unappealing?
He went on and on. Oh, good God. I groaned as I walked into the lodge-themed restaurant and laid eyes on the gaggle of ridiculously dressed city dwellers.
Already found him?
That ass from beside me. Hard to miss. If so much as one of them has a natural hair color, I'll swear to God I'll eat my shirt. I grumbled, a grimace working its way across my jaw and up over my face, making my eyes start to twitch as it passed by. Thad, this is worse than you said. You didn't say nothing about that over there. Can they even wipe their own asses yet?
Would you stop being such a crotchety old bastard for a few minutes and just do this for me? Every actual guide turned me down so far, and you're all I got. Shit, you're all they got. You really gonna sleep at night knowing this circus is out unsupervised?
He basically begged.
Now come on. Get into character and put on a good show for everyone. Really sell the bit whilst they do this stupid, whatever documentary thing they're doing.
I'm gonna tell you no one day, and you ain't gonna know what to do with yourself when I do. I mumbled to myself as I forced myself in the direction of the table.
Alright everyone, as promised, the best trail guide money can buy.
That announced to the chattering rainbow that had pervaded one of my favorite places in town to eat.
I'd just like to say, on behalf of everyone, we're glad to have you along for the trip.
One man said as he stood from the table to shake my hand. Yeah, sure you are, I said with gravel in my voice, forcing myself to shake his hand.
Hey, be nice,
Thad said, swatting me across the shoulder. I don't like that. Be nice. It's insincere. You're still thinking whatever it was. You're just not saying it. Thad says it makes me unapproachable. But that's Thad, and who cares what he thinks? So where the exact hell are we going? I asked the man who was still clinging to my hand. Pulling out a map, he motioned me over to the table as he unfolded it in the center.
There's this old cabin the owner in the property told us about. It's an old hunting shack that sits right on the river. So we're going to take a pontoon boat most of the way and use that as our base of operations,
he explained. A base of operations? To hunt for Bigfoot, I said sarcastically.
This is a serious expedition, sir,
he said, suddenly getting real stern. Yeah, if you say so. But let's get something straight. If you want me to be a part of this boondoggle, we need to get something straight. At the end of the day, whatever I say goes. No arguing. None. I'll shut the whole thing down if you give me any lip about anything. Got it? I asked everyone staring up at me from their seats. I said, got it? Everyone nodded quietly before Thad patted me on the shoulder.
You got this. How hard could it be?
Miss! Could you please not lean over the edge? I found myself shouting at a young girl with greenish-blue hair, who was damn near about to fall into the water as we made our way down the river on the rickety old pontoon boat. "I'm going to need more of these," I groaned, fishing several aspirin out of the small bottle in my pocket.
What's that?
"What?" I asked the blue-haired girl who abandoned the side of the boat and made her way over to me.
That thing sticking out your backpack, is that a shotgun or something?
She asked, pointing over to my shoulder. "What? No. There's no reason to be bringing a shotgun out into woods in the middle of nowhere. Don't worry about it."
But what if the Squatches are hostile?
"The what?" "That's a risk I'm willing to take."
You don't think we're going to find anything, do you?
"Not a damn thing but sticks and squirrels," I told her bluntly. "Bigfoot ain't nothing but a guy in a suit. You're wasting your time."
I don't think so. I like to believe there's more out there. Things we haven't discovered yet.
She said with a smile.
The world's better with a little magic in it.
She added before sitting down on one of the benches. "Hey, look! I can see the cabin! Oh, thank God! We don't have to carry all this shit very far." One of the group suddenly called out from behind me, right into my goddamn ear. "Oh, my bad." He apologized when he saw me rubbing my head.
Wow, what a dump. Are we really staying here all week?
Another asked, walking up beside me.
It looks like it's about to cave in.
"Were you expecting 5-star? I asked, already starting to get frustrated with the childish complaining.
You could help, you know.
The complainer from earlier yelled at me as he hefted a box full of junk across the pier. "I could, but you hired a guide, not a manservant." I explained about the time I heard a splash as the blue-haired girl walked straight off the edge of the dock into the water.
Shit, why does it turn like...
She coughed as she emerged.
I think my bag is waterproof. Oh no!
She added, diving into the river after her bag that was now making a floating escape. "I'll go get a fire started," I said more to myself than anyone else, knowing she'd be freezing when she got out of the winter cold water.
What are you doing?
She asked, shivering next to me as I split the wood for the fire.
Why can't you just like it is?
"Because if you split the wood long ways, it exposes the fibers to the grain, and that gives it more surface area, and that makes it burn easier," I explained as she picked up a feather stick and lay it already on the stump next to me.
Oh, and what's this thing?
She asked again. Same idea. Little fires are easier to start. Then you use that fire to make a big fire. Haven't you ever made a... I started to ask, but then something caught my attention. Or a lack of something. "Hey, listen," I told her, taking a second to stand and look around.
What is it?
She asked nervously, looking around to copy me. "Nothing. Haven't you been paying attention? I can't hear any animals. No birds or anything. It's dead quiet."
You stop. You're freaking me out.
She shrieked.
Just to make the fire already.
Shaking it off, I got back to work on the fire. And I heard some of the others start trying to crank the generator near the cabin as the rest worked on cleaning it out and making it livable. Once the fire was going, I took a seat next to one of the larger rocks and watched the group of novice outdoorsmen clamber around, trying to figure out what to do next. After some time, they began to congregate inside, forming a circle in the center of the living area. At one point, I overheard one of them mention that whoever was the last person to use the cabin must have really liked plaid, because the drawers were filled with them. But I wasn't really paying attention until I heard someone say something about an expedition. Assuming that might have something to do with me, I finally stood up and gradually made my way over to their general vicinity to listen.
So we were thinking about doing a quick walk around the perimeter of the cabin before it gets too dark. What do you think?
One of them asked, suddenly turning to look at me. Yeah, sure. I don't guess much could go wrong just around the cabin. But can we make it quick? I asked, more concerned with dinner than Bigfoot. Alright, everyone, stay together. Close together. That means don't wander off. Don't climb up any trees. Don't fall into any holes. Don't even piss behind a bush far enough away that I can't hear it hit the ground. You understand? I spoke to everyone at once whilst we were gathered outside.
But what if we...
No. I interrupted the guy who raised his hand to speak. No what-ifs. You stay with the group or you stay your ass in the cabin. Got it?
Yeah.
He answered, slowly lowering his hand. Once we got everything worked out, they started shuffling into the woods.
Hey, isn't it kind of dark out here for this time of day?
The blue-haired girl asked, looking up at the sky. That just made me worry we were in danger of getting rained on whilst we were out, motivating me to hurry them along every chance I got. That was in between my groans of occasionally overhearing some of their Bigfoot nonsense as they fumbled and pawed around the foliage. And this went on for about an hour or two until someone actually called me over. It was a mousy-looking guy, with big Coke bottle glasses and clothes that looked a little less like they were too big, but more like he was several sizes too small. He was crouched over next to an area of dirt and a large patch of vines and weeds.
You know about tracks and stuff, right? What do you think all this is?
He asked once I got to him. I looked down at where he was pointing to see a small patch of disturbed grass. Looks like some deer bedded down recently, I told him, a little relieved for some reason that the sign of an animal was around here. They find a little tucked away spot like this sometimes and use it as a bed when it starts getting cold like now.
So it
doesn't have anything to do with Bigfoot? No. I cut him off, knowing what he was about to ask. No sooner did I say that, thunder started to rumble in the distance. Okay, bring it in, everyone, I called out. I don't need anyone dying of pneumonia or getting hit by lightning, or getting scared by loud noises and running off alone into the woods. I added quietly to myself as I made a quick head count to make sure I hadn't lost anyone. Hey you, squirrely girl with the blue hair, in with the rest of the group, please. I will handcuff you to someone else if you wander off again.
Ooh, kinky,
she chirped as he jogged over to the group, making me rub my brow in frustration. All right, everyone, back to the cabin before it starts raining, I instructed, waving the group back down the trail the way we came. Leave some nothing to find tomorrow. Hey, who left the door open? One of them called from ahead of me. I've been bringing up the rear to keep track of everyone, but what he said didn't sit right, mainly because I very clearly remember closing the door myself. Nobody did. I closed it myself. Maybe there's something wrong with the latch and the wind blew it open. I'll take a look at it once everyone's back inside. Well, everything seems fine. Maybe it just didn't latch right. We'll just have to make sure to be careful when we close it, I said once I looked over it and determined that there wasn't anything wrong with it. Hey, I thought you guys cleaned up in here, I added when I looked up and noticed the state of the place.
Well, we started to, but then we started setting up the equipment and got a little sidetracked.
The first guy from the group spoke. Okay, clean. Now. I commanded the unruly gang of pseudoscientists as I picked up an old broom from a closet and started sweeping, against my will. And hurry up. I'm hungry, I added as the rain started to fall, rattling the tin on the roof. After that, I finally managed to enjoy myself once the cleaning was done. I was sitting in an old wood rocking chair, eating the freshly made stew that was sitting on the table made from a huge tree stump, thunder steadily rolling through the woods.
You look comfortable,
the blue-haired girl I had just taken to calling Squirrel said. Yeah, This part is pretty tolerable, I replied as I scooped up another spoonful of stew. The hell are you looking at? I asked once I noticed her glaring down at my lap. Then she started to reach. Hey, whoa, oh. I stopped when I noticed her pawing at my backpack.
You never told me what this is,
she said, tugging on the protrusion extending from it. Knock that off, I barked as I swatted her hand away. It's none of your business is what it is. Just let me eat in peace. After that, she sulked off to rejoin a group and plot their activities for the following day. I occasionally overheard them say things about tracks and hair and filming and scat. And for a brief moment, I entertained the idea of taking a big anonymous shit for them to find, just to screw with them. But who has the time? I abandoned the idea in favor of sneaking around them and getting another bowl of stew whilst they were distracted. The next morning, we all gathered once again in front of the cabin before heading out on the first real hike of the trip. The expedition, according to the title of the documentary. Once everyone was ready and they had filmed everything they had planned for the cabin, we set out down a trail that I had spent some time looking over on the map of the area the night before. Just like before, I walked a little behind to be able to keep an eye on everyone at the same time. For most of the time, my only entertainment was occasionally screwing with them by tossing a rock or a stick into the bush and watching them go into high alert. That is, until one of them called me specifically over to look at something. Assuming it was probably another deer bed or something, I dragged my feet over to where he was crouched. Have you ever seen this before? He asked as I walked up behind him. I looked down to see a dead snake hanging from a small branch of a bush by a piece of twine. No. I think one of your buddies is messing with you, I told him. What makes you so sure? Isn't this something a juvenile Sasquatch might do? They're very intelligent, you know. Doubtful. It's probably one of them trying to fake stuff to spice up the film. Just look how fresh it is. And in winter. Someone probably brought it specifically here to do this. It's not decayed at all. It's not even stiff yet. It had to have just been hung here. Were you paying attention to who was around here before you? No, I was paying attention to the ground. Well, regardless, it's probably not a Bigfoot's doing. I repeated as I noticed something off in the distance. Way farther from the group than they should have been. Hey! Get your ass back over here! I called over to them. They didn't respond. So I told everyone to stay where they were as I walked over to chew their ass out properly and bring them back to the rest of the group with me. Before I could get to them, they walked behind a large thicket and disappeared from view. Hey, didn't you hear me when I said... I stopped as I rounded the patch of brush and saw... nobody. Embarrassed that I didn't think to do a head count to see if anyone was actually missing, I slowly shuffled back over to the group, telling them that I must have mistaken a bird for a person or something like that. All right, everyone. Time to start heading back. It's gonna be dark soon. I called out later that evening as things began to wind down. Don't give me any lip, I interrupted one of them who was starting to open their mouth to complain. After everyone and everything was gathered up, we started down the trail again. They chattered amongst themselves ahead of me as they tripped and stumbled in the failing light. About 3/4 away back, I remembered to do a head count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Everyone stop right now!
What is it?
Squirrel Girl shrieked, startled from me suddenly screaming at the top of my lungs at them. Is someone missing? I didn't say anything. I was prepared for someone to go missing, even if I did everything to avoid it. But I didn't know how to tell them. There was an extra person. The sound of a twig snapping behind me drew my attention away from the group for just an instant.
What? What is it?
Squirrel Girl asked as I turned back towards them. Okay, hold on, I just need to. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I counted to myself. Astounded that I managed to miscount and panic that bad. Sorry, everyone. I just made a mistake and thought we were missing someone. I lied, doing my best to herd them back down the trail, the nagging, uneasy feeling refusing to go away.
Don't scare me like that,
Squirrel Girl yelled as she stomped down the path, almost tripping over a root in the process.
Are you okay?
One of them asked with a look of concern. Yeah. The old eyes ain't what they used to be, he answered, glancing back to see the broke twig. Let's keep going, I said, pushing the group forward down the trail.
Why is that damn door open again?
A growl when the cabin came into view and I saw that the front door was hanging wide open.
Maybe it was raccoons?
Squirrel suggested when she noticed my frustration. What? Raccoons? Why would you even say that?
Well, they have, little hands, don't they? And they're always getting into people's houses and stuff?
She said, sticking her head inside the cabin to peek around. Are you?
Checking for raccoons? Yes.
She finished for me, still peering around the empty shack. Something tells me it's not raccoons, I said, pushing my way past her to see if I could figure out why the door kept coming open whilst we were gone. Maybe something to do with that, I started to say, but was interrupted by someone calling me from outside. What is it? I asked as I walked back outside to see several of them gathered around something on the ground near the front porch. There was a small hill of dirt, where something had been freshly buried. Taking a stick, I dug around until I could tell what it was. A dead bird. It was a dead bird. A freshly dead one. Which again had been weird, because I hadn't seen head or tails of any living thing other than us the whole time we'd been there. No sooner did I get a good look at it, the group had already started getting filming equipment out and were spouting all kinds of bullshit about the bird a Sasquatch had buried in front of our cabin. After we were done jumping to conclusions, I finally got everybody to go back inside, where they continued to caw and chatter about the dead snake and bird from that day. I wasn't really paying attention until I happened to overhear them say, well, come to think of it, this is behavior I've never heard reported from a Sasquatch before. Hearing that, I stood up and eased closer to the group to listen in a little better. And then he continued what he meant.
Well, in all cases of interactions between people and Sasquatches, I've never heard of them hanging snakes out of trees or burying birds in the ground. But I have heard of it in some traditions of magic from Native American tribes out west. Black magic in this case. It's like a violation of nature or something. A snake crawls on the ground, so they hang it in the air. A bird flies in the air, so they bury it under the ground. A human walks on two legs, so they are called the ones who walk on all fours, renouncing their humanity.
Once he was done speaking, everyone just sat there in silence for a while, until a loud crash of thunder shook the entire cabin, even making me jump a little in the process.
Oh my god, that scared me!
Squirrel Girl sighed, patting her chest with a laugh.
So why on earth would a Sasquatch be doing Western Indian black magic in the woods down here?
Another one of them asked.
No, he's saying it might not have been a Sasquatch, genius.
Someone else corrected. I didn't feel like trying to explain to them that it was probably the guy who just explained all the magic stuff screwing with them. Plus, it was kind of funny watching these jackasses chase their own tails. Or it was funny. And then...
Hey, something's walking around outside.
The mousy guy with the Coke bottle glasses spoke up as he looked through the window of the front door.
Oh my god, it's a deer!
Squirrel Girl shouted as she got up and looked out of the window. I got to the window before the rest of them, having been sat closer to the window, and was a little curious to see why a deer was out wandering around in the middle of a thunderstorm in the winter. Immediately, I could tell something wasn't right about it. The way it walked was stiff and jerking, and it was moving around aimlessly with no real intent or direction. Is it rabid? I asked myself as I watched it lumber closer and closer to the porch. My question was answered as soon as it turned its head, and a loud shriek of terror broke the silence from behind me. The entire right side of its face was missing. The white teeth and bone and raw muscle exposed as it glared in at us through the glass, just barely illuminated by the light of the room.
What the hell is wrong with it?
Several of them asked in alarm as they peered into the thing's empty eye socket. After that, it was obvious why it moved so strangely. Because it was dead. Once I knew that, the way it moved suddenly began to resemble a puppet being moved around by its strings.
Everyone get away from the windows!
I suddenly shouted, causing everyone in the room to jump before they all backed away near the center of the space. I drew the small curtain closed and, for some reason, turned the lock on the doorknob.
That poor animal. Out there hurt so bad in the rain and cold.
Squirrel Girl pouted to herself.
I wish we could help it.
I didn't want to try to explain to them that there's no way that thing was alive, especially with what I saw just before I closed the curtain. Just as I turned to walk away, I could tell, very plainly, that the whole right side of its abdomen was torn open and hollow. That deer was definitely dead, but somehow still walking around out there. I'm telling you, I'm not even sure we should leave the cabin today, I told everyone the next day as I stood between them and the front door. I don't feel like it's safe right now. I'm telling you.
We can't cancel this whole thing just because of a sick deer. Have you lost your mind?
The guy from before that seemed to be the head of the group argued.
Freaking over little things like a miscount, and now you're all up in arms over a hurt deer? I'm starting to think we hired the wrong man.
He added, poking at my chest, which very nearly earned him an ass-whooping. I'm not worried about the deer. I'm concerned about what did that to the deer. I personally don't feel like having the side of my face ripped off. Do you? I asked defiantly.
Keeping that from happening is exactly the reason we brought you along, mister.
The man said with a sneer as he turned to walk back the other direction to the back door.
I bet you wish you brought that shotgun now, don't you?
Squirrel asked with a yawn as she slowed down to walk next to me and made our way up a different path for the day. Why do you look like you're still half asleep? I asked as she rubbed her eyes.
I couldn't sleep last night. That deer must have really freaked me out because I kept having bad dreams all night. Everyone else said they were having nightmares too.
I stayed back as she rejoined the group and listened as they filmed more footage for the documentary. At some point, I heard one of them say something about what species Bigfoot was, but it just sounded like something really stupid said in a smart person's voice, like that ancient alien show or something. Shaking it off, I continued to follow and guide them to the location they had picked for the day. Apparently, they thought there was a cave system nearby that the Sasquatch may have used as shelter. It had already been established that when we got there, they would remain outside near the mouth of the cave, and I would go in first and make sure everything was safe, or as safe as a cave can possibly be, before waving them in and staying between them and the rest of the cave. That would let me check deeper in and gradually lead them in, if there was actually a cave to be found, that was. Okay, so where exactly are the caves supposed to be? I asked once we arrived at the location over the sound of several of them complaining about sore legs and hurt feet.
Well, if the topography of this map is accurate, then the most likely locations would be over there.
The mousy one with the glasses said, pointing to a cluster of hills across a small field. And to his credit, he was right. A minute or two later, we were standing outside of a large opening, staring into a dark tunnel. Whoa, absolutely not! I scolded, grabbing Squirrel by her shoulder as she attempted to stroll past me into the cave. What did I say before we left? I go in and look around, and when I've determined it's safe, then you can come in. And don't wander off whilst I'm in there, I added sternly before digging the large flashlight out of my backpack and switching it on. As I walked in, I tried to see if I could find any signs of animals, but the mostly stone floor made it hard to make out any tracks, and I wasn't able to find any droppings or signs of nesting. So I started checking the ceiling to see if there was any danger of collapsing. Once I determined that everything looked relatively okay, I waved them inside and retreated farther back to check on the next segment. The irony was that if I found anything that might have been a sign of a Bigfoot, I wouldn't have let them come in, because it would have most likely have been a bear, which would have been bad, primarily because bears are real, and likely hibernating in places like caves that time of the year.
Hey look, cave paintings.
The mousy guy suddenly shouted.
They look Cherokee. I think it looks like someone tried scratching them out or something.
Decided to leave them to their discovery as I continued to look around deeper into the tunnel. The cave made a turn into a corner and into a larger chamber. As I started to walk in and check it out, I heard someone say my name. "What?" I shouted back towards the opening.
What?
One of them called back even louder. "Who said my name?"
What?
"Who said my name?"
What are you even talking about?
Forget it, I said to myself as I aimed the light around the corner of the chamber until it passed over. Bones. I felt my stomach drop as I looked down at the small heap of bones and the sliver of plaid fabric peeking out from under it. As I slowly backed out of the cave, I gave my light one last pass across the chamber to find a roughly made wooden table, topped with what were very obviously several human skulls of varying age. "Everyone get the fuck out right now!" I yelled as I came barreling around the corner, doing everything I could to keep the urge to panic at bay. "Back to the cabin! Move!" I added, shoving the person after person out of the mouth of the cave as fast as I could. "Don't ask questions! Move your ass!" I barked at Squirrel as she opened her mouth to argue. At that point, they all seemed to realize I was grimly serious when I reached into my bag and snatched out the large blade that had been resting inside the entire trip, and used it as a pointer as I shouted one more time for them to run, not walk back to the cabin, and not stop unless I told them to. As we tore down the trail, something drew my attention over the increased panic of the group. Everything was getting darker. It was the middle of the day and there wasn't a cloud in the sky, but I could see the light begin to die. "Double time, people, go!" I shouted from the rear, propelling them down the path as exhaustion began to set in. "Everyone, get inside now!" I commanded as the cabin came into view from around the corner, keeping my eye on the trail to make sure nobody was following. Even though I didn't see anyone, it didn't put me at ease as the sky continued to darken.
Okay, what the hell?
Several of them asked once we were all inside and they had almost caught their breath.
You're telling us you found human remains in the cave?
The head of the group asked once I was done explaining everything.
Is that all?
Is that all? Did you hear what I said? Whoever was staying in this cabin before is dead.
Did anyone else see these remains?
He asked me. Did? So now you're suddenly skeptical. You've been dragging me around these woods looking for a goddamn hillbilly campfire story, and you think dead bodies in a cave is hard to believe? You know what? It doesn't matter. Trip's over, I said as a matter of fact. Everyone pack your shit inside first. Nobody walk out of that door until everything in here is ready to go.
I'm not shutting this whole thing down just because you saw some bones in a cave,
he declared stubbornly. Oh, okay. What time do you have? I asked him, making him check his watch.
1:27, what does that matter?
He asked. Come here with me for a second, I told him, waving him over to the window. Does it look like 1:27 outside right now? I asked, pointing out at the gathering darkness.
Why is it night outside?
I heard Squirrel ask from another window.
What's going on?
I don't know, but we need to leave before it gets any worse, I said as I looked back outside and saw the deer from before slowly lumbering around the woods. This just got more complicated. I sighed as the screams of everyone seeing the lifeless, shredded body of the animal rose from the windows beside me.
What are we gonna do now?
Squirrel asked as she broke from the bickering group in the kitchen to sit next to me on the couch. I'm working on it, I said, almost defeated.
So what is that?
She questioned, pointing at the 14-inch long piece of cutlery in my hand. It's a barong. My dad was from the Philippines and it used to be his. I told her, my grip tightening around the tarnished silver collar on the handle. Anytime I go out like this, I bring it along. It's almost like he's out here with me. And it makes a pretty good machete.
I never would have guessed you would be
Sentimental.
Yes, I got my tongue tied.
She said, a little embarrassed.
We're gonna be okay, aren't we?
If we don't panic, think before we act, and make safe, rational decisions, most likely, I told her, making sure she understood I couldn't work miracles, and that everyone has to cooperate to stay safe. It was whilst I was explaining that the head of the group came over and told me that someone needed to put more gas in the generator outside. No, you'll all stay in here. I'll go do it, I said, holding my arm out in front of him.
Can't we just bring it inside so we don't have to go outside to refill it?
He said, almost possessing me to slap him across the face. Have you lost your goddamn mind? I asked incredulously. Do you not know how generators work?
I mean, we can deal with the noise for a little while.
It's not the noise that's the problem, you horse's ass! I shouted over them. That's a gas generator. That means it works like the alternator in your car. It burns petroleum fuel to spin a magnet that generates electricity and produces a bunch of deadly gases like carbon monoxide as exhaust. If you brought that inside and let it run, you'd all be dead in a few hours. Jesus Christ, I ranted as I walked outside and closed the door behind me. As I grabbed one of the cans and began to carefully pour it into the tank, I suddenly heard something from just out of sight. A whisper. Someone whispering my name. I told you to stay in... I started to say, but the voice stopped me. I could tell it was the voice of the guy who was in charge of the group.
That's not me in there.
What? Well, obviously you can't be in there if you're out here. Now get back inside, I added as I looked around for any sign of decaying deer.
That's not what I mean. That person in there. He isn't me. He just looks like me. Everyone in there is in danger.
He said in an urgent tone. What the hell are you talking about? Hey, where'd you go? God damn it. I cursed to myself as I finished filling the tank back up and stormed inside. When I say stay inside, I mean stay inside. I scolded him as I came through the door.
What? I've been in here this whole time. They've all been looking right at me,
he said defensively, everyone nodding in agreement. That's when I started to get a little nervous. I wasn't out there talking to myself. So who was it? Did anyone go out the back door after I walked outside? I asked, the frustration building in my voice.
No, we were all in here the whole time. Why?
The mousy one answered. Look, if anyone sees anything, come straight to me and let me know. If you hear anything, you let me know. Understand? In the meantime, stay away from the doors, and especially the windows. I explained to them, doing a quick head count as I spoke.
What's going on? You're freaking us all out.
Another one of them said as I peeked outside again. There was someone, whatever, outside that talked to me and sounded just like him. I said, pointing at the man. Said something very concerning. And if it wasn't him, that's even more concerning. So now we stay at the very least in 2-person groups. You stay within someone else's field of vision at all times.
Have you slept at all?
Squirrel asked me the next morning as she got up from her place on the couch. No.
Oh. Well, what are you doing?
She added, trying to see what I was looking at. There's something out there. Something other than that deer. I kept seeing it move around the edge of the light. And it should be daylight right now, but it's almost pitch black. Something's gone really wrong here and I can't figure out what. I added just before everything flashed bright white with lightning as thunder cracked through the forest. And then there's that, I said, gesturing at the rain that had started back up yet again.
What are we gonna do now?
She asked, glancing nervously through the window. Well, if I could go back, I'd tell everyone to just get straight onto the boat and haul ass out of here. But now I think we need to figure out the safest way to get everyone to that boat from here.
Well, you're not gonna be much good if you don't get a little rest. Everyone is starting to wake up, so why don't you take a nap or something? If anything happens, I'll let you know, okay?
She offered. Knowing she had a point, I leaned the chair back I was in and let my burning eyes rest for a little while.
Hey! Hey!
I woke to someone shaking me as they were almost yelling in my ear.
Hey! He just went outside. I tried to talk him out of it, but...
Squirrel desperately explained as I sat up. What? Wait, who? I asked as I looked around the room. Once I scanned all over the faces, I knew it. It was the boss guy.
The generator was starting to run out of gas, so he said to go fill it up.
Gas? It should still have enough for... How long was I asleep?
Well, a while. You just seem so tired.
God damn it! I shouted, jumping out of the recliner, snatching my weapon from the table beside me and darting out the door. What did I say? I made myself... I trailed off when I didn't find him near the generator. I felt my stomach tighten as I looked around and didn't find any sign of him. I was getting a sinking feeling as something bad had already happened. And I saw him come strolling out from the other side of the cabin. Oh my God, I sighed, the tension leaving my body all at once. Get your ass back inside! I shouted at him, pointing at the front door. And didn't even put any gas in the tank. Probably wandering around looking for a damn Bigfoot. I complained in the rain as I picked up the container and began filling the tank back up. Alright, where is he? Hiding 'cause I'm about to kick his ass? I barked as I stormed back through the door.
He just walked back through,
the mousy one said as he started to point to the back of the cabin. I was suddenly stopped by a knocking on the door. The room fell silent, all except for the rhythmic sounds of the rain and thunder. A few seconds later, another knock followed by the boss's voice.
Hey! Unlock the door! I'm freaking out here!
He shouted in a panic. Where did you say he went? I asked, keeping my eye on the door as I spoke.
Into one of the back rooms. I think to dry off, maybe?
He answered in a shaking voice. Did he say anything to you when he came through?
No, he just walked right through,
he said, his eyes also trained on the door.
Will someone please let me in?
The man called through the door again.
I'm freezing!
Slowly, I reached out and pushed the curtain aside to let the light shine on his face. As it came into view, the silence was broken by the sound of the back door, slamming open against the wall. Get in now! I bellowed at him as I snatched the door open and dashed straight to the back where the door stood wide open. letting me look out into the dark, stormy woods. And then a thought hit me, causing an icy chill to crawl down my back. Did someone go out? Or did someone come in? Again, fighting back the urge to panic, I glanced down to see a trail of wet footprints leading to, or from, the door. The wood floor making it impossible to tell which way they were heading. Head count, I whispered to myself. Paranoia starting to set in. Nobody move! I'm doing a head count! I walked back to the main area of the cabin and started the count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Slightly relieved, I still counted back again just to double check. And then, for some reason, looked over to everyone to check for doubles. Once I was sure everyone who was supposed to be in there was, I told them to stay put and not open the door for anyone, even me. Then I made my way into the back, the tip of the large blade in my hand leading the way. As I walked around the corner into one of the bedrooms, I immediately noticed a small puddle. Under one of the windows that had been half opened. Did they try to escape through the window first? I thought to myself as I crouched down to investigate. But as I leaned in to get a better look, I heard Squirrel speak from the other room.
"But you said not to let you in,"
she said, nearly making me convulse in alarm at the statement. Taking a slow, deep breath, I sighed. Good girl. Before carefully, quietly easing my way out of the room, holding my finger over my mouth to signal to her not to say anything to me. Then I gestured for her to keep talking as I crept closer and closer so I could hear what would be said next.
"I'm sorry, I can't. You told me not to,"
she repeated. And then the voice from outside spoke. My voice spoke. Please, it begged, causing everyone to look at me, apparently all now convinced beyond a doubt it wasn't me out there, on the other side of the door. Just let me in. I'm freezing out here. The voice spoke. Keep going, I mouthed to Squirrel when I saw the weird look on her face from the strangeness of the statement.
"Well, what are you doing out there anyway?"
she asked. There was no answer. So she added,
"I thought you were the back of the cabin."
And at that, the sound of feet breaking off into a run across the porch pounded through the room, as whatever was on the other side made a break for the back door. Almost falling in my desperate attempt to beat it there, I pushed myself off the couch and rocketed to the back door as soon as I realized I hadn't locked it when I was back there. But I didn't make it. As I rounded the corner and crashed shoulder first into the wall, I could already see the knob start to turn. Doing the only thing I could think of, I threw my full weight into the door as it began to open, slamming it closed just long enough to wrestle the latch into place.
"Please let me in."
Squirrel's voice suddenly spoke from the other side. Go to hell. I snapped through my gasping for air as I slid my back down the wall opposite the door. Once I said that, I heard more shuffling from outside before the thud of footsteps came down from the roof.
"What the hell is going on?"
A few of them asked once they walked over to my place, like I would know something about the situation they didn't.
"There's a skull on the bed."
Squirrel whimpered from the room where I found the open window.
"There's someone's skull on the bed,"
she repeated. I pulled myself up off the ground and joined the crowd that was now gathered around the bed. Sure enough, in the center of the bed sat a human skull. An old one by the looks of it. Yeah, not our biggest issue right now, I said, picking it up like a bowling ball and tossing it out the window. I need everyone to stay focused. This is something meant to scare you into making bad decisions. Nothing else. Now we need to figure out how we're all gonna get to the boat in one piece.
What about all the...
Forget the damn equipment. I cut the one who started to speak off. It's past the time to worry about that shit. So please, that's a boat. In the water. We can't do the movie thing where one runs out and drive it up to the front door for everyone else. That's not gonna work. Everyone, all of you are gonna have to make the trip, and it's not a short one. We can only just barely see it from here at the cabin, so that's a lot of distance of everyone in the open, in the dark, in the middle of a storm. A lot can go wrong, and I need everyone to do everything they can to keep any of that from happening. Understand? At that, everyone nodded, so I kept talking. Now, why whatever that thing is out there hasn't just broken in through the windows yet, I don't know. But I think, maybe, it's playing with us. Screwing with our minds or something.
It? What do you mean?
It. I mean it. I don't know what's going on out there, but it's not being done by a person, and I'm damn sure it's not your Bigfoot. I answered, pointing a finger towards the sounds of footsteps still raining down from the ceiling, which almost on cue stopped.
What do you think it's gonna do now?
Squirrel asked, right before the lights all died at once, plunging everything into total darkness. The click of my flashlight broke the quiet as I aimed it at the rest of them. Apparently killing the generator, I complained. Squirrel, that firewood from earlier, is it still in here? I asked her.
Yeah, do you want me to build a fire?
Yeah, do that. And everyone else, away from the windows and stay in my line of sight until the fire gets built. I instructed the rest of the group, teetering on the edge of their own individual panic attacks. Once the fire was ready, which I had to coach Squirrel through starting, we all gathered around the crackling glow, all except for me, who stood back to keep an eye on everyone in my sight, which wasn't easy in the dim light of the fire. As I sat there trying to keep myself calm, I didn't want to make any rash decisions that caused someone to die as a result. But that state of calm didn't last. As I sat there, I glanced out of the window, or rather, at the window, to look at the soft reflections of the fire in the glass. My eyes were suddenly drawn to a small, glowing orb. I couldn't look away for the longest time as it bobbed up and down in the dark. And then, suddenly, another orb appeared, as the head it was attached to turned to face me. Their eyes, two bright, glowing, empty eyes. The moment they noticed me and met my gaze, I could see by the faint light of the fire, something else appeared. I felt my eyes widen against my will in terror as two rows of long, jagged teeth split open to frame an abyss of a maw just inches away from the thin glass separating it from us. That was a moment the wooden walls I thought were shelter became a cage. A sudden flash of lightning burned the thing's silhouette into my eyes before it vanished without a trace. As it disappeared, I glanced over at Squirrel, who had won her own look of terror plastered across her face. She peered out of the window, and then to the person sitting next to her, and the person sitting next to him, and the one next to him. They were all staring out the window together. That's when I noticed the fire. When I looked out of the window, it was still new and burning brightly. But now, it was almost nothing but a small flame and a few embers. That's when I realized I had just lost a lot of time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There were only 6 people now, not counting me. Shooting up off my place in the couch, I began tearing through the cabin looking for the missing person broken away from the group. But there wasn't anyone in the rest of the home. They were just gone. I lost someone. I had made it this far. I had taken every precaution, done everything I could think of to keep them safe. And just like that, it was all undone in a moment. It took everything I had to stay on my feet that moment, as I tried to shake everyone back to attention and motivate them to get ready. Only stopping to throw a log onto the fireplace to keep the light and warmth going just long enough to organize our escape. "Who's missing?" I suddenly shouted, causing them to look around.
Danny? I can't find Danny,"
one of them said in a groggy voice.
"Why, where'd he go?"
"Just stay together and don't wander off. Let's figure this out," I shouted as I paced back and forth, fighting off the invasive thought that we can't keep it out, and it can come and go whenever it wants. Okay. I don't think we can shelter in here anymore. We have to make a break for the boat. We're not going to last much longer, I admitted to them.
"Whoa, wait, hold on. You want us to just take off and hope nothing happens?"
The boss guy asked in protest. "It's that or stay here where something bad is definitely going to happen. Take your pick," I said, half as a veiled warning that I was getting ready to leave him behind if I had to.
"So, what do you want us to do?"
The mousy one asked nervously. "Anyone with a flashlight, turn it on. Everyone move as fast as they can while staying shoulder to shoulder, not falling. It's going to be really wet and muddy out there, so that's not going to be very fast. And you're going to want to panic and take off. Don't. Everyone needs to stay together and stay close the whole way. From here to there," I instructed as I started breaking legs off the table and chairs and passing them around to use as clubs. "Try not to hit the person next to you if you have to use any of these," I warned. As we all gathered around the door, we heard a crash from the other side of the cabin, and footsteps as something walked in. The next moment I was looking at the almost dead fire. 1, 2, 3. "Everyone out now! Get to the boat and don't stop moving!" I yelled, causing Squirrel and the mousy one to jump from the shock, and the only other remaining 2 to shake themselves back. Focus. Once everyone was alert again, I snatched the front door open and waved them out into the storm. As the last one ran by, I followed behind them to join the group huddled together in the rain. I couldn't keep my eyes still as they darted from place to place, from tree to tree, shadow to shadow, waiting for something to emerge from the dark. No sooner had we left the cabin did the lightning begin to pick up. The flash was disorienting, and the thunder started to hurt my ears as the rain came down in sheets and waves, chilling me to the bone. But I was able to push the group forward as the wind whipped through the trees, pushing us to one side of the path. To their credit, they didn't stop, just like I told them. Not until...
"I think I see the deer!"
Suddenly Squirrel called out, bringing us all to a halt as I looked around them to see the rotting animal glaring back at me through the empty socket. The next moment, I was alone. I could hear the others crying out from all directions in the surrounding woods, trying to figure out where they were and where everyone else was. I called back, telling them to follow my voice to the trail that I wasn't standing on anymore. I found myself standing in the middle of the woods as the chaos of the storm continued all around me. "Okay, never mind! Nobody move! Just keep calling and I'll find you!" Hopefully first. I added silently to myself as I stumbled around, my flashlight barely helping at all anymore.
"I'm over here!"
The nearest voice called to me. It was Squirrel. "Keep making noise! I'm on my way!" I called back to her as I aimed myself in the direction of the sound, hoping as hard as I could that it really was her voice. About a minute later, I found her huddled up at the base of a large tree, trying to shield her eyes from the stinging rain. "Squirrel, come on, let's go! I heard someone this way! I shouted, pulling her up by her arm that I could barely feel through the building numbness in my hands.
I found the boat!
The mousy one suddenly called out.
Over here!
I thought I told you not to... Never mind! We're on the way! Stay there! I called back thinking the other one would hear the same thing and meet us there. It took a lot to get out of those woods, but eventually we found the trail and were able to make our way to the river where the boat was still leashed to the pier. Once the mousy guy saw us crawling down the path, he started waving his arms wildly to draw attention. Barely able to stay upright, it took all we had to jog the rest of the way to the water.
Where's the other guy?
He asked once we made it to him. I figured he'll find his way here too. If not, I'll go see if I can find him, I explained. But I wouldn't have to. As I said that, his and Squirrel's attention both switched to the trees behind me. I turned to see the remaining guy emerge from the woods. But something didn't seem right. Hey, stay right there for a second! I ordered, holding the icy handle of the massive knife in my hand as tight as I could. Raising it up and pointing it at him, I added, Say something like, What's her name? I shouted the question. Say her name! I commanded again. If you don't say it, I swear to God I'll leave you behind!
Squirrel,
he said awkwardly, his mouth making weird, unnatural shapes as he spoke. You two, on the boat. Now. You stay right there! I almost choked on my words as he began to slowly descend from the tree line step by step. As he walked, his skin darkened, and his clothes began to fall away like strands of hair from a rotting animal. All the distinguishing features of his face disappeared and gave way to a shadowy figure with those same horrible glowing eyes. Forcing myself to act, I turned and ran the rest of the way to the boat, hacking at the rope to set it free from the wooden post it was tied to. Once I was on board, I pushed with everything I had left against the pier, setting us to drift into the river. As we slowly receded away from the bank, the shadowy figure stood still and silent at the edge of the water, those glowing eyes never moving from me for even a moment. Then, something I didn't notice at the time, something that didn't make sense now that the moment had passed, clawed its way to the front of my brain. It didn't occur until right then. That other guy. You said the other guy. What's his name? I asked, hoping I'd hear the right answer, as I turned to look at the mousy guy. What was his name? A small grin was the last thing I remembered before I was standing alone on the boat, much farther out than before, but still just close enough to see the two dark figures on the shore, and the lifeless body lying next to them, as I drifted away with the current.